Forget the gangsters. Forget the flappers. The most unhinged, out-of-control force in the Roaring Twenties wasn't Al Capone. It was the law itself. This wasn't just about prohibition. For 10 solid years, America went on a bender of legislative insanity, passing laws so absurd, so controlling, and so hilariously dumb, they feel like they were written during a fever dream. Today, we're exposing 44 of them, from the law that made your breakfast illegal to the one that turned your sleeping habits into a criminal offense. 1. You'd think the Roaring Twenties, the era of prohibition, was a dry and sober time. Well, you'd be hilariously wrong. The government left a loophole so big you could drive a beer truck through it: medicinal alcohol. Suddenly, your friendly neighborhood doctor became the most popular man in town, wielding his prescription pad like a magic wand. Got anxiety? A shot of whiskey will calm your nerves. Aches and pains? Have some brandy. Feeling a bit alive on a Tuesday? There's a prescription for that too. It was a national wink and a nod situation where whiskey was officially rebranded as a wellness product. Pharmacies looked less like places for medicine and more like the only legal bars in the entire country. 2. Imagine the perfect beach day in the 1920s. The sun is out, the waves are crashing, and a daring young flapper is showing off her modern, newfangled bathing suit. And then the long arm of the law appears, armed not with a gun, but with a tape measure. Yes, in many coastal cities there were official swimsuit patrols. These cops had one solemn duty: to ensure that no woman's bathing suit was more than 6 inches above her knee. They would actually stop women on the sand, get down on one knee, and measure the distance. It was the ultimate clash of old-world morality against new-world freedom, all playing out on a beach with a deadly serious police officer measuring a woman's thigh. 3. So, the government's grand plan to stop people from drinking was prohibition. But what about the millions of gallons of industrial alcohol used for things like fuel and solvent? Their brilliant solution was a program of denaturing it, which is a polite way of saying they ordered companies to poison it with chemicals like methane and mercury. The idea was to make it undrinkable. The reality was a complete catastrophe. Bootleggers, either not knowing or not caring, would steal this tainted alcohol, try to repurify it, and sell it to the public. The result? The government's own policy ended up blinding, paralyzing, and killing thousands of its own citizens. It was a cure that was infinitely more deadly than the disease. 4. We've all heard the joke: why did the chicken cross the road? Well, in 1920s Quitman, Georgia, the answer was simple: to commit a crime. The town passed an actual ordinance that made it illegal for any chicken to cross any road within the city limits. Now, this law was technically aimed at the owners, holding them responsible for their renegade poultry. But you have to wonder what kind of avian anarchy was gripping this town that they needed to legislate it. Was there a chicken crime wave? A turf war between rival flocks? The mental image of a sheriff sternly telling a chicken to stay on its side of the street is the absolute peak of small-town legal absurdity. 5. Every time you wait at a corner for the little green man to appear, you are obeying a law that didn't even exist before the Roaring Twenties. That's right, the crime of jaywalking was literally invented in this decade. Before cars took over, streets were public spaces for everyone: pedestrians, carts, kids playing. But as automobiles became more common and more deadly, the powerful auto industry launched a massive PR campaign. To shift the blame for accidents away from their drivers and their machines, they shamed pedestrians, lobbied for new laws, and created the crime of jaywalking. They didn't make cars safer for people. They made people illegal for cars. 6. The 1920s saw a horrifying and powerful resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. Their members, hidden behind white hoods and masks, spread terror and exerted political influence across the country. And this led to one of the most deeply ironic laws of the era. As a direct response to the Klan's secret society tactics and masked violence, numerous states began passing anti-mask laws, making it a crime to wear a mask in public to conceal one's identity. So, The very group that relied on anonymity to commit its atrocities inadvertently caused the creation of laws that made their own signature disguise illegal. A strange but fitting legal boomerang. 7. In Massachusetts, your right to a good night's sleep was apparently less important than your neighbor's right to silence. A state law made it illegal to snore. Let that sink in. They passed a law against something you do unconsciously while you're asleep. But here's the truly bizarre part. There was a condition. It was only illegal to snore if your bedroom windows weren't closed and securely locked. So the state wasn't just policing your breathing, it was policing your ventilation. You could snore your head off and wake up the whole house as long as you were doing it in your own sealed, stuffy, oxygen-deprived room. 8. Jazz wasn't just music in the 1920s. It was a threat to civilization itself. In several American cities, laws were passed banning jazz bands from public venues, with officials declaring the music dangerously erotic. They believed the rhythms stirred primal urges and undermined traditional morals. Police raided clubs, confiscated instruments, and even shut down entire events just because a trumpet got too flirty. In some towns, dancing to jazz was practically considered foreplay. Apparently, syncopation was a gateway drug to societal collapse. 9. In the Roaring Twenties, if you were a woman, your own face could become a battleground for public morality. The sight of a flapper with painted red lips sent shivers down the spines of the old guard. They saw lipstick not as a cosmetic, but as a declaration of war on decency. So, what did they do? They tried to legislate it out of existence. Cities drafted laws to levy a heavy sin tax on lipstick and rouge, as if buying makeup was the same as buying a carton of cigarettes. The message was clear. Your face is a potential billboard for sin, and if you insist on advertising, you're going to pay the government for the privilege. 10. One of the most bizarre crazes of the 1920s was the dance marathon. Couples would hold on to each other and shuffle around a dance floor for hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours until they literally collapsed. So naturally, cities decided to ban them. But not because they were a horrifying spectacle of human suffering, oh no. They were banned in many places for the crime of public exhaustion. Think about that. It wasn't illegal to dance yourself into a state of near death. It was just illegal to do it where other people could see you looking tired. It's the ultimate bureaucratic logic. We don't care if you destroy your body, just please have the decency to do it behind closed doors. 11. The geniuses of prohibition never stood a chance against the geniuses of capitalism. With wine illegal, California vineyards started selling these giant, solid bricks of concentrated grape juice called Vine-Glo. And the best part was the warning label, which was a masterpiece of sarcasm. It would read something like this: Warning, do not dissolve this brick in a gallon of water. Add the packet of yeast we've conveniently included, and then seal it in a jug for 21 days, as this will result in an alcoholic beverage, which is illegal. It was the business equivalent of yelling, "I'm not touching you," while poking your little brother in the face. 12. The state of Montana looked around in 1921 and saw a problem: men. Specifically, unmarried men. They were viewed as lazy, unproductive drains on society who weren't doing their civic duty of settling down and creating more taxpayers. So, they did what any sensible government would do. They taxed them for being single. Yes, the infamous bachelor tax slapped a $3 fee on all bachelors. It was an official state-sponsored penalty for failing to find a wife. It's like your nagging aunt who always asks why you're still single suddenly got the power to send you a bill for it. 13. Welcome to a theater in Memphis, Tennessee, where the most dangerous thing on stage isn't a prop sword, but the actor's eyeballs. Local authorities, in their infinite wisdom, decided that an actor making eye contact with the audience was a gateway to total moral collapse. So they banned it. And they didn't stop there. Winking was right out. That was practically a silent proposition. Performers had to act as if they were in a bubble, completely unaware of the hundreds of people watching them. It's a miracle they didn't mandate blindfolds. Your ability to see was now considered a public nuisance that needed to be regulated. 14. Picture your sweet, elegant grandmother in the 1920s heading out to a tea party in her finest hat. It's a beautiful creation, adorned with extravagant feathers from some exotic bird. Well, thanks to the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, your grandma might as well have been a gangster carrying a Tommy gun. This well-intentioned conservation law made it a federal crime to possess feathers from most native bird species. Suddenly, the entire high-fashion hat industry was a criminal enterprise. It created the surreal possibility of federal agents raiding not a speakeasy, but a high society luncheon to confiscate an illegal plume. 15. This one isn't just absurd, it's horrifyingly real. In the enlightened era of the Roaring Twenties, major American cities like Chicago still had so-called ugly laws on the books. And they enforced them. These laws made it illegal for any person who was diseased, maimed, mutilated, or in any way deformed so as to be an unsightly or disgusting object to appear in public. If you were poor or sick or a wounded war veteran, you could be fined simply for existing where others could see you. Their solution to human suffering was to make it illegal to be seen suffering. It's a level of bureaucratic cruelty that is almost impossible to comprehend. 16. With a massive wave of immigration, America in the 1920s was a melting pot of languages and cultures, and that terrified some people. So, states like Nebraska and Iowa passed aggressive Americanization laws that made English the only language allowed for instruction in all schools, public or private. Imagine being a 10-year-old kid who just arrived from Italy or Germany, and the language your parents speak at home is now effectively illegal in the classroom. The message wasn't about education, it was about conformity. In the land of the free, you were free to speak any language you wanted, as long as it was English. 17. Okay, picture this. You're driving your shiny new Model T, probably showing off to your date, and then, sputter, sputter, silence. You've run out of gas. Today, that's an embarrassing phone call. In the Roaring Twenties, in some towns, it meant you were now officially a criminal. I'm not kidding. You could be fined because you forgot to fill up. They passed laws that treated a moment of forgetfulness like a deliberate act of public chaos. Imagine a cop walking up to your stranded car, not to help, but to write you a ticket for illegal lack of fuel. The government had found a way to monetize your bad memory. 18. So, by the late 20s, the government realized prohibition was a joke. People were drinking more than ever. Their solution? A law called the Jones-Stalker Act, which was basically the legal equivalent of using a nuclear bomb to kill a spider. Before this, getting caught with a flask was a slap on the wrist. After this law passed, that same flask could land you 5 years in federal prison. For your first offense. They thought this would scare everyone straight. Instead, everyone looked at the government and said, "You guys are completely insane," and turned against the whole idea of prohibition for good. It was the ultimate overreaction that blew up in their own faces. 19. The 1920s was the dawn of aviation. For the first time, humans could soar through the clouds like birds. A new age of wonder. And what was one of the first things these new gods of the sky decided to do? They started throwing their garbage out the window. Yes. People were chucking apple cores, newspapers, and who knows what else out of open cockpits. It got so bad that towns had to pass specific laws making it illegal to treat the sky like your personal trash can. It's amazing to think that one of humanity's greatest achievements was immediately followed by the need for an anti-littering in the stratosphere ordinance. 20. Radio was magic in the 20s. A box in your living room could suddenly talk, sing, and tell you stories. But the moment the government heard it, they immediately decided it needed parental controls for the entire nation. The Radio Act of 1927 made it a federal crime to say anything obscene, indecent, or profane on the air. And who decided what was profane? Some guy in a stuffy office in Washington. One naughty word whispered into a microphone in California could now get you charged with a felony. It was the beginning of the government becoming the official national babysitter for our ears. 21. You're chugging down a country road in your newfangled automobile, feeling like the king of the world. Suddenly, a horse sees your mechanical monstrosity. Its eyes go wide with terror, and it bolts for the hills. Well, according to some old laws still on the books, the next step wasn't to apologize. It was to get out your toolbox and completely disassemble your car. On the spot. Can you picture it? A poor guy with a wrench furiously taking the wheels off his Model T while the horse that started it all just stands there, smugly munching on grass thinking, yeah, that's what you get for being the future. 22. What do you do for fun on a Sunday? Catch a baseball game? Maybe play a round of golf? In 1920s Massachusetts, you could forget all of that. The state's blue laws legally murdered the weekend. All public sports were banned on the Sabbath, forbidden, illegal. But don't worry, they offered an alternative. The only form of public entertainment you were allowed to enjoy was a sacred music concert, which sounds about as fun as being trapped in an elevator with a kazoo player. It was the law's way of saying, your weekend fun is canceled. Please enjoy this mandatory organ music. 23. Okay, get ready for a dose of bureaucratic insanity that will make your brain short-circuit. In the year 1924, the United States Congress had to pass a special law, the Indian Citizenship Act, to officially grant citizenship to Native Americans. Let that sink in. The original inhabitants of the entire continent, the people who had been there for thousands of years, needed a piece of paper from the newcomers to be considered official members of the club. It's like someone breaking into your house, changing the locks, and then magnanimously offering you a guest key. The sheer audacity is just breathtaking. 24. Here's a censorship twist even Hollywood couldn't script. In some towns during the late 1920s, laws were introduced banning female voices from being dubbed into films. That's right, women could appear on screen, but heaven forbid they be heard. Authorities feared that a woman's recorded voice, amplified in a darkened theater, might lead to unspeakable immorality. So instead of adding realism, early talkies muted their actresses to keep things wholesome. Apparently, the most scandalous thing a woman could do was speak in full stereo. 25. We all have bad ideas sometimes. But in the 1920s, thanks to the Red Scare, just having a bad idea could land you in prison. They passed these things called criminal syndicalism laws, which is a fancy way of saying thought crime. If you stood on a street corner and advocated for a labor strike, or even just suggested that maybe, just maybe, workers should have more rights, you weren't just a complainer. You were a felon actively trying to overthrow the United States government. It was like having a permanent government wiretap on your brain, where one dangerous thought was enough to get you locked up. It's cancel culture, but with actual iron bars. 26. Picture a police raid. You're imagining cops busting down a door looking for bootleg booze or a gangster, right? Wrong. In the 20s, they could be raiding your local fortune teller. The post-war spiritualism craze was booming, but the authorities saw it as an epidemic of fraud. So they made it a crime to predict the future for money. Your sweet old neighbor who reads tea leaves? A criminal. The mysterious woman with the crystal ball downtown? A public enemy. The government officially went to war with tarot cards, waging a legal battle against anyone who claimed to know what was going to happen next Tuesday. Apparently, the only entity allowed to make wildly inaccurate predictions about the future was the government itself. 27. Here's a law that sounds wholesome on the surface but is pure, distilled poison underneath. In Oregon, the KKK was so powerful that they helped pass a law requiring all children, without exception, to attend public school. Sounds fair, right? Unity. Except the entire point of the law was to destroy Catholic schools, and by extension, the influence of Catholic immigrants. It was a legal weapon disguised as an education policy. It was the government, backed by the Klan, telling thousands of parents, "We don't trust the way you're raising your kids, so we're making your schools illegal." It's one of the most sinister and chilling abuses of power in the entire decade. 28. What is the most depraved, soul-destroying activity you can imagine? What pastime is so corrupting that it must be stamped out by the full force of the law? According to 1920s Alabama, the answer was playing dominoes. On a Sunday, I am not making this up. While gangsters were building criminal empires, the state of Alabama was worried about people getting a little too rowdy with small dotted tiles. Can you imagine the scene? A family is quietly playing dominoes around the kitchen table when suddenly, the morality police kick in the door. Drop the double sixes, this is a raid. We have reason to believe a game of recreational tiling is in progress. 29. The Charleston was the dance of the Roaring Twenties. It was pure, chaotic energy, flailing arms, kicking legs, a complete release of inhibitions set to a jazz beat. And the establishment absolutely hated it. They didn't just disapprove, they outlawed it. Public dance halls across the country banned the Charleston, calling it animalistic, immoral, and a direct threat to public decency. They looked at that joyful explosion of movement and saw nothing but the complete collapse of Western civilization. It's the same panic every older generation has about the younger generation's fun. But instead of just complaining, they actually made it a crime to have that much fun with your feet. 30. Here's a heartwarming Hollywood story that's actually a nightmare. Child star Jackie Coogan was one of the most famous people on Earth, the first kid to become a true millionaire movie star. So what happened to his money? His parents spent it all, every last dime on themselves. And the most insane part? It was perfectly legal. There was no law to stop them, so after Jackie grew up and found out he was broke, the state of California had to invent a brand new law, the Coogan Act, specifically to protect child actors' earnings. They had to legally mandate the idea that maybe, just maybe, parents shouldn't be allowed to rob their own children blind. 31. Only in 1920s New York could relaxation become a legal liability. City officials, gripped by moral panic, passed a bizarre ordinance banning laughter during massages. Loud giggling or chuckling in a massage parlor, illegal. The reasoning? Authorities believed laughter might signal indecency, and the law was meant to prevent anything improper. Clients had to stifle joy, and masseuses had to act like monks. A back rub was fine, but if it made you laugh, that was suspicious. Because nothing says danger like someone enjoying a shoulder massage too much. 32. What are you doing right now? Just sitting there, reading this? In the Roaring Twenties, that could get you arrested. The crime was called loitering, or vagrancy, which was a wonderfully vague term that basically meant existing in public without a purpose we approve of. It was the ultimate legal multi-tool for the police. Don't like those union organizers on the corner? Arrest them for loitering. Want to harass people you don't like the look of? Loitering. It was the government's official power to arrest you for doing absolutely nothing at all. Your crime was being motionless in the wrong place at the wrong time. 33. So your daughter wants to go on a date with that slick-haired fella who just bought a brand new Ford. Innocent enough, right? Not in the Roaring Twenties. The automobile was so new and so liberating that moralists immediately decided it was a brothel on wheels. They were convinced that the second a young couple got into a car unsupervised, they were headed straight for damnation. So, towns passed actual rules and ordinances requiring parental permission for a boy to take a girl on a car date. It was a legal document to go for a drive. The amount of trust in the younger generation was so low, they basically tried to put a chaperone in the glove compartment. 34. Let's talk about laundry day, a simple, universal chore. But in 1920s West Virginia, it was a legal minefield. According to their Sunday blue laws, you could hang your shirts, your socks, your unmentionables out on the clothesline. That was fine. But if you dared to hang a blanket, you were a criminal. I need you to appreciate the insane specificity of this. A wet sock was holy. A wet blanket was an act of rebellion against the Sabbath. Someone, somewhere, sat down and drafted a law that specifically targeted Sunday blanket drying. The logic is so baffling, it feels like it was written by aliens who only had a vague idea of what laundry was. 35. Get ready for a story about big business being petty. A new product came out called filled milk, which was basically milk with the expensive butter fat replaced by cheap and healthy coconut oil. It was a godsend for poor families. So, did the dairy industry compete by lowering its prices? Of course not. They went straight to Congress and had a federal law passed, the Filled Milk Act of 1923, that banned the interstate sale of their competitor. They disguised it as a public health concern, but it was just a corporate hit job. They made a perfectly good food product illegal just because it was eating into their profits. 36. Imagine being a pilot in the early days of aviation. There's no GPS, no radar, just you, your flimsy plane, and a map on your lap that you're probably reading upside down. You look down at the endless fields and identical-looking towns and have absolutely no idea where you are. The government's solution? The Air Commerce Act, which strongly encouraged every town in America to paint its name in giant 15-foot letters on the roof of the most prominent building. It was a nationwide, legally pushed project to turn the entire country into a giant, low-tech Google Maps for lost pilots. 37. What is the most dangerous, depraved, and corrupting piece of media you can imagine? In the 1920s, the United States government had an answer. A novel called Ulysses by James Joyce. They declared this literary masterpiece to be so obscene, so pornographic, that it was illegal to even bring it into the country. The U.S. Post Office was given the legal authority to act as a literary death squad. If they found a copy, they would seize it and burn it. Think about that. While real gangsters were running cities, your federal government was spending taxpayer money to hunt down and incinerate a book. 38. Think your expressive dance moves are harmless? Not in the Roaring Twenties. In several towns, performers were legally restricted from using excessive hand motions during shows. Too much gesturing on stage? Fine. Flashy fingers while dancing? Shut it down. Jazz hands were considered too flamboyant and suggestive for delicate audiences. These laws basically made enthusiasm illegal. So if you were an actor or dancer, you'd better keep those hands to yourself, unless you wanted the local morality squad to jazz you straight into court. 39. The Florida land boom of the 1920s was pure, uncut chaos. Swarms of slick, fast-talking salesmen descended on the state, selling swampland to gullible northerners as prime beachfront property. The state got so overwhelmed with these scammers that they tried to build a legal wall around themselves. They passed laws making it nearly impossible for any out-of-state real estate agent to get a license to operate in Florida. It was a desperate attempt to control the madness. Of course, it didn't work. The con artists just found new ways to con, proving that you can't outlaw that level of determined, glorious greed. 40. Gentlemen, a word of advice from 1920s California law. If you're picking up your date, you better hope she isn't wearing a housecoat, because a real state law made it illegal for a woman to drive a car while wearing a dressing gown. It wasn't about safety. It was about public image. A man could probably drive in his pajamas and no one would care, but a woman in a comfortable housecoat was seen as an affront to public decency. It's the kind of law that makes you wonder what kind of epidemic of robe-based driving they were dealing with to feel the need to legislate it. 41. The speakeasy had a problem. To seem legitimate, many pretended to be restaurants. And in the old saloon days, it was common to offer a free lunch to anyone buying a drink. But the government caught on, so they passed laws making it illegal for any establishment that sold near beer, the legal, low-alcohol substitute, to also serve a free lunch. It was a brilliantly sneaky legal attack. They couldn't prove you were a speakeasy, but they could make your business model illegal. It was a 1,000 IQ move in the endless cat-and-mouse game between the drinkers and the feds. 42. Here is the single greatest story of a law backfiring into something wonderful. Across the nation, blue laws made it illegal to sell an ice cream soda on a Sunday. It was seen as sinfully decadent. So what did the clever soda fountain owners do? They got creative. They took the ice cream, took the syrup, but left out the soda water. They served it in a dish instead of a glass and called it an ice cream sundae, as a little wink to the law that forced its creation. That's right. One of the world's most beloved desserts, the sundae, was invented for the sole purpose of finding a loophole in a stupid old law. 43. We've talked about what you can't do in a car, but what about what you can't say? Well, in the 20s, your vocabulary suddenly got a lot smaller behind the wheel. Towns all over the country passed specific ordinances that made it illegal to swear from a moving vehicle. Your road rage was now a punishable offense. You could get a ticket for yelling something at the guy who just cut you off. It's one thing to police what people do, but to police what they scream in a moment of pure, car-induced fury? That's a whole new level of government overreach. 44. So after a long week of hard work, you want to go out on a Sunday night and let loose, maybe hit a dance hall with your friends. Too bad. In many places, the party was legally over before it even started. On top of banning specific dances like the Charleston, many towns had sweeping blue laws that just made any form of public dancing on a Sunday completely illegal. Not just immoral, but against the law. It was the ultimate shutdown of the weekend. The message was clear. Sunday is for quiet reflection in church, and if you even think about tapping your feet to a jazz beat, we will fine you for it. So, there you have it. An America that tried to outlaw everything from snoring to cherry pie. After seeing a government attempt to legislate morality on this insane level, here's the real question I want you to answer. Are we any different today? Look around. Which modern law, rule, or social norm that we all currently accept as normal will history look back on in 100 years as being just as mind-bogglingly absurd as banning jazz or measuring swimsuits? I want to see your most controversial and brutally honest answers in the comments. Let the debate begin. And if you enjoyed digging through the most ridiculous parts of history, you know what to do. Obliterate that like button and subscribe for more stories they definitely didn't teach you in school.